event today is entitled Right-Wing Israeli Polity, Implications for the Arab Minority, and I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Jafar Farah and Ms. Amal Elsana AlHjooj here today. And I'm just going to read through their bios. I think some of you may be familiar with them, and if you're not, this is a good time to learn about their work and what they're doing with the community over there. And it's great to have them with us today to talk about this important and timely issue. Mr. Jafar Farah is director of the Mossawa Center, the Advocacy Center for Arab Citizens in Israel, and is a longtime advocate and activist for the rights of the Arab community. He currently serves on the Public Council for the Governmental Equal Opportunities Commission, and was formerly the head of the National Union of Arab Students and the president of the Committee for Arab Students at Haifa University. He also founded CGAS, the Center for Educational Guidance for Arab Students, and several other Arab NGOs. Prior to joining Mossawa in 1997, Mr. Farah worked as a journalist for many years in the Arabic and Hebrew media. Ms. Amal Elsana AlHjooj is co-executive director of the Negev Institute for Strategies of Peace and Development, and the founding director of AlJooj NISPED, which is a very long acronym. Arab and Jewish Center for Equality, and also she founded the Lakia Women's Association and serves on the steering committee of Women's Lawyers for Human Rights. She began her career as a community organizer at 14, and at 17 established the first Arab Bedouin women's organization. In 2003, she won the Lady Globe's Career Women of the Year Award, and in 2005, she was a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize within the framework of the 1,000 Women submission. So it's really great to have both of these experts here on their respective issues to highlight both the challenges faced by the Arab minority within Israel and the challenges facing the Bedouin community in Israel as well. With that said, I want to also welcome in our webcast audience, which is viewing online. You can participate in the discussion, of course, via Facebook or Twitter by sending messages to @Palestine Center, or sending your questions on the chat roll as well. We'd be happy to accommodate your questions at the end of our presentations. I'm going to turn it over to Jafar at this point to begin.
I would like to thank you for hosting us with you today. Landing yesterday in the US, it was a big challenge for us to move from the Middle East, what's so called by the Israeli Prime Minister lately, the jungle, to the only real democracy in the world, which is DC actually. And I would like to thank all of you for coming and joining us for this briefing. I hope that we will give you a little bit more information about the reality than the challenges that we face as a community. We are about 1.5 million Palestinians that remained in our homeland in 48. About today, 20% of the population, about 14% of the voters in Israel. We are very unique. We are Palestinians, Arabs, and also citizens of the State of Israel. Most people think that it's complicated. We think that it's potential, actually. The unique status that we have today as Palestinians in this place is very unique and very important for any kind of peace building. This is how we see things. Still, I will explain a little bit what we face in the daily life, but usually we try to be optimistic people, and we keep the vision that we can be free people and live in dignity and equality like everybody else. This is our dream, and this is why Mossawa have been chosen as our name. Mossawa means equality, and we choose this value as a value that we would like to promote in our community and also in the region as important value. What we face since the establishment of the State of Israel was systematic discrimination against our community. This systematic discrimination have been implemented in the beginning until 65, 66, through military regime. Later on, it have been implemented through different legislations. We have today in the legal system in Israel over than 30 laws, from communication and media laws to immigration laws, that deepen the discrimination of the Palestinian community in different fields of life. People abroad refer to us as, to Israel, as the only democracy in the Middle East, but it's very unique democracy that equality actually is not part of any basic law. Israel doesn't have constitution, and basic laws is replacing the constitution in some fields, but in all basic laws that I would refer to, there is a referral to the fact that Israel is identified as a Jewish state, and of course there is no equality in any basic law in Israel. These laws give a lot of resources, public resources, to one group and discriminated the other group. The fact that you have today over 400 localities inside the Green Line, that it's only Jewish citizens that can live in these localities, have been built on land that have been confiscated during the years, and only Jews can live in these places. Actually, what happened in the last few days, that the Knesset took a decision to make it legal to discriminate in housing. A few years ago, 15 years ago, when Qa'dan family, Palestinian family, he's a physician and with his wife is working as a teacher, they choose to live and to move to live together in Katsir, in a Jewish location that have been built not far away from their village. And when they applied, they have been rejected. So they appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ordered the state that the state can't discriminate against this family on housing. So this the court decision was very important court decision in the struggle against discrimination in housing. But just last week, the Knesset took a decision in a majority. Of course, most people, even in Kadima, in Tzipi Livni, in the opposition, disappeared from the hall, disappeared from the floor, and didn't show up to the voting. The Knesset took a decision to make it legal to discriminate in such villages if these villages is up to 400 inhabitants. So what we used to face in systematic discrimination, now without any shame, the Israeli government and the Israeli Knesset is making it legal in the political system that you can declare that you want to discriminate the Palestinian community. In the past, they used to come all over the world and say, we are the only democracy in the Middle East and everybody is equal. We used to say, no, we are not fully equally, but like there is no full equality in Israel. But what's going on in the last 2 years, that this government is promoting, and this Knesset is promoting over 25 laws that will deepen the discrimination of the Palestinian community more and more, and make our life more complicated. We have a newsletter here, and our colleagues can offer you, and you can find the 6 laws that are already in final stages of approval in the Knesset, but they deal with Nakba. I don't know how many of you know the narrative, the Nakba. The Nakba as a word, the Nakba is our narrative, our wording to what happened to us in 48. And for the last 10 years, the Palestinian community in Israel commemorated the Nakba in public events in the same day of the celebrations in Israel, of the independence of Israel. So the Knesset took a decision that it will forbid us from commemorating the Nakba in our local councils, NGOs, and schools. Any governmental funding, you mean that the taxes that we pay, as the taxes that you pay to fund also 3 billion shekel of your taxes is going to the Israeli army in this case. But the taxes that we pay, we can't use to commemorate our narrative and our history. And it's forbidden today legally. So part of the laws that have been approved just lately deal with family life. If I fall in love with Palestinian from the West Bank or Gaza, they can't come and live with us in the same house inside Israel. So these laws show that the current Knesset is escalating its it's escalating actually the Jewish-Arab relations inside Israel. And it's not only to isolate Gaza, it's not only to occupy the West Bank and Gaza, but also to take your taxpayers and create a legal system that will deepen the discrimination against these taxpayers. Look, we face social economic discrimination. As a result of this social economic discrimination, every second Arab child is living under the poverty line, actually. Totally villages, and Amal will explain more about the Palestinian community in the Negev, live in a situation of unrecognized villages. Over 45 villages is not connected to sewage systems, to electricity, to water, to education system. And the result that there is a huge gaps in infant mortality rates, 18 to 1,000, the infant mortality rates in the Negev community, while the average in Israel is between 3 to 4 to 1,000. These gaps that have been created systematically by the political system in Israel created two different realities. One, and this is two different realities that have been documented by the OECD. The OECD allowed Israel just last year to join the OECD, to join this club of countries that have first-class economies. And in the report that have been produced through the process of approving Israel to join the OECD, they report about two different economies in the same country. One economy that we face as a Palestinian community, and the other one faced or economy that actually is challenging even the American economy. The economy in Israel today is better than the economy in the US, and you have to know that, taking in consideration that the US today face also big discussions around the US budget. And you need to cut welfare services in the US, but parallel, nobody debate the cuts of military subsidy to the state of Israel, 3 billion shekel, that will support the military forces in Israel. But you need here in the US to cut welfare subsidies to your communities and to keep this support to the Israeli government. I would just want to refer before Amal will go for further details on women's status and also on the Negev, to talk about the challenges that we face in the reality of the Middle East today. We have good feeling, it's frustrating for us to see what's going on in Libya. But we think that the 20 Arab countries need to move from the reality that these countries faced until now to new realities. Some people thought that this transformation will stuck the Palestinian issue. The Palestinian issue is stuck because of the Israeli government decision not to make peace with the Palestinians. It's not stuck because of Tunis or Libya or Egypt. But we as Palestinians, as people that we believe and look for liberation and look for freedom, we think that the Egyptian people and the Tunisian people and all people of the region deserve real democracies. And we hope that all democracies that will be built in the region will join the only democracy in the Middle East, and all the region will become one big democracy, and we will live in real democracies. I want to say something about this whole illusion of the only democracy and the jungle. We are not living in a jungle. We have big challenges as Arabs and as Palestinians to build our nations and to build better future. Until now, the Israeli occupation have been abused to prevent any kind of democratization in the region. No more. The region will go ahead with democratization and will challenge the old regimes, and we need to find ways how all people of the region will need to negotiate our future. How the old regimes with the political Islam, with secular movements, with the youth and with the women will need to negotiate the future of these countries. And we don't want anyone to go ahead and to tell everybody in the world that it's the 22 Arab countries against Israel. It's not the 22 Arab countries. It's the responsibility of the Jewish people in Israel that are living in Israel to build peaceful future with their neighbors. It's the Palestinians and the Jews' responsibility to take decisions if we want to live in two-state solution or one-state solution. If the Israelis want to live in one-state solution, they have to say that clearly, and they have to take clear decisions that they have to end the occupation and ensure that everybody will be equal in one-state solution. If they want to live in two-state solution, nobody, it's not Obama's responsibility, it's not Hosni Mubarak's responsibility, it's the Israeli occupation responsible to hold millions of Palestinians under siege in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories, also in the West Bank. It's not Abu Mazen decision, it's much more Israeli decision where they want to go. And this is what we are coming to tell people here in the US. It's not Obama's decision. It's the Jewish community in Israel that have to decide if they want to live in the middle of the Middle East. We are their neighbors, the Palestinians, the Arab region, the neighbors. And they have to find the ways how the people of the unrecognized villages in the Negev will be recognized. And if we, the community that have been since 48, living inside Israel without violence, without shooting, without struggling in violent means, are humiliated in such way, I don't know how the region will be treated in the future. We think that the Jewish Israelis, the 6 million Jewish Israelis, have to prove that they can live with a 1.5 million Palestinian minority in Israel in a peaceful way and coexistence. And if this will be successful story, then we will have better chances that the 6 million Jews will find their way to live with the 400 million Arabs that are living in the region. If they will fail to live with us and will keep discriminating us and humiliating us, I think the chances to get peaceful solution to the region will be very limited. And I think I will stop here, and we will go ahead with all more explanation later on with questions. So تفضلي Amal.
Shukran, Jafar. First of all, I would like to thank you all very much for having this great opportunity to share with you the stories and the challenges and also the hopes that we are in. And what we see is there are actually institutional approaches towards the Arab minority inside Israel, and not only towards the Bedouin Palestinian minority inside Israel. One time they see us as a demographic threat because we are doubling ourselves every 12 years, or they see us as a security threat, or they see us as a second-class citizens. So being part of these kind of approaches, there is no way that we can see equality and human rights are protecting inside Israel. In the Arab Bedouin population, today there are 182,000 people are living there. Most of the years, our community is invisible. People will travel from Tel Aviv to Eilat and not looking around themselves and asking themselves what's going on there. They would see villages without electricity, without water, without sewage, without infrastructures, and they wouldn't even think about the fact that these people are citizens of the state of Israel, and they are part of a democratic state, and they are not doing any connections between democracy and human rights. They never do that kind of connections. So this is one of the major challenges that we are seeing, that in the Israeli Jewish mainstream, the Arab Bedouin population is not there. They are invisible. Nobody can see the challenges that the Bedouin are facing. How the unrecognized villages issue was raised and born. In the late 60s, when the Israeli government decided to settle the Arab Bedouin population into certain areas, and the approach was and still bringing maximum Arabs in minimum land. This was the approach, and still the approach. They didn't come to the Arab Bedouin population saying to them, this is what we're going to do. There is villages that we're going to establish here, and for you to come and to live here in these villages. The only thing that they approached the Arab Bedouin population is that you give up your ownership of land, and we will give you land, 20% of the land that you can build, and 80% that you can get some money for yourself. The money was so little, and the 20% is nothing, that the majority of the people resisted this plan. And the people that already living in these 7 towns that the government decided that time to establish for the Arab Bedouin population, the township, the majority of the Bedouin people rejected the plan, and the people who decided to stay in their original villages, the government said, well, if you are going to stay here, then forget about the services. No infrastructure, no water, no electricity, no health system, no welfare system. You can move and go around in one of the unrecognized villages, and you will see that the electricity passing through the village, but there is no electricity in the village itself. So people decided to stay in their original villages despite the fact that there is no services, no infrastructures, no roads, nothing there. And at that time, this was kind of putting a pressure on the people. If you want to move to have electricity and water and school, then you have to move into one of these towns that the government built. And what's the situation of these towns that the government said, well, if you move into these towns, then we will get more services. What we have in Rahat, the biggest city, 40,000 people are living in the Bedouin city of Rahat that the government planned in the late 60s, we are talking about more than 70% unemployment in these villages, and 60% living under the poverty line, 65% under the age of 18. So you can imagine what are the cases of social problems that exist in this village, and especially in Rahat, when we are talking about poverty, when we are talking about violence, we are talking about a very young generation without any kind of support and help. So we are talking about the situation of social problems, but not only that. When the government decided at the late 2 years ago, actually, they said we have to figure out what are the solutions on the land issue, because the Bedouin community are claiming for ownership. Most of the Bedouin community, including my father, they don't have any documentations on this land. They do have oral history, oral agreements that they used to have between themselves. This is your land, this is my land, and that's it. Most of the people don't have the documentations. The Israeli court is not recognizing this oral history. In Canada, they recognize the oral history, but there in the court they are not recognizing. So if people would come to the court, they will lose their case, okay, because they don't have any kind of documentations. 2 years ago, they set up a committee under the Judge Goldberg, and they said, well, we have to check what's going on with the Bedouin community. We have to solve the problem, and we will come with a solution. The Goldberg committee sat with 170 Bedouin people. I was one of them. We present the cases. We put all the cases on documentations. They came up with recommendations. There is no plan for the Bedouin community. This is most of the years how they dealt with the Bedouin community. That there is recommendations, there are reports, but these reports are there and the recommendations are there, and the policy continue to be as is it. For example, what we are facing these days is Al-Aragib. Al-Aragib is one of the villages that was demolished by, this is the 23 times now, since 27 of July till today. 23 times the government of Israel came and destroyed. It's not real houses as you can think. It's simple houses. This is how people live, and they came and destroyed these houses and left people without any homes and without any support. The case of Al-Aragib is the case that represents the case of the 45 unrecognized villages. So if Al-Aragib will succeed in that case, then that will be a big success. But this is why the government of Israel is not giving up. They really want to destroy all meanings of hope that people would have. And then if they win, the government will win the Al-Aragib story, then no one from the unrecognized villages will raise their voices and stand up and say that we are entitled of our land and our villages. Now, this is something that we are facing, and I know it by myself because I went through it. They would say you have no right on land, okay, because you don't have any documentations. If you would come and say, well, I'm going to sell this land, they will recognize your land. If you want to demand, they will say, this is not your land. If you want to come and sit on the table and let's negotiate and sell this land, they will say, yes, this is your land. So this is the cases that many of the Bedouins are facing. If you want to sell, we are recognizing. If you want to say that this is your land, we are not recognizing this land. So this is the situation of the Arab Bedouin population. Today we are talking about 80% employment among the women, no jobs opportunities, and not only that, mostly they will use what we call mentality against us. They would say to me as a woman saying, we would like to provide jobs opportunities to Bedouin women, but this is your traditions, this is your mentality that prevents women from going out. We approved by our NGOs. And when we provide jobs opportunities, most of the women come and work. In Rahat itself, in each job opportunities, there are 20 women fighting to get this job. And every time I used to say, whereas opportunities, also mentality got changed. And this is something that we are facing every day. They will use what we call traditions, especially in women issues. They will use it against us. For example, polygamy. Okay, you talked about women's status. Polygamy issues. By the law in Israel, it's prevented. It's against the law. But they are not doing anything on that issue. Okay, they would say, this is your culture, we are sensitive, but why don't you are sensitive when we build a house for our children in unrecognized villages? Why it's not our culture and identity when we are there? So it's a double standard when they are dealing with the Bedouin community. In some cases, they would say, this is your culture, this is this, and this is, and other cases, if it's a land issue, it's not our culture, this is a political decision. It's not only about laws, it's also about implementations. It's also about the policy. It's also about how the Israeli mainstream view the Arab population, especially the Arab Bedouin population. Always they tend to say that we are obstacles. When they are planning something and building a new Jewish villages, they view the Bedouin community as a part of the obstacles. We are part of the solution, and we are not going to give anyone to deal with us this way, as we are part of the problem, we are part of the solution. And this is why in the last 20 years, the non-governmental organization that we organized by ourselves in our area start putting alternative plans on the table that the government cannot even neglect, and they have to give a reaction to these things. But this is a very long way to go. But there are some progress, but still there is a lot to do in the area of the unrecognized villages in the Negev. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the both of you. Before we go into the Q&A, I just wanted to pose one question to each of you. And at this time, if anyone watching on the webcast online, if you have questions, this is the appropriate time to send them in. And you can also send them in through Twitter at Palestine Center, or on the webcast page through Facebook or the chat roll as well. Jafar, I wanted to ask you, at the end of last week, there was an interesting poll that was released on Israeli youth and the political leanings of Israeli youth that showed that a really remarkable number of them were shifting to the right, hard to the right, in terms of their views, their political views, and also their views on favoring the Jewishness of the state over the democracy of the state. Can you talk a little bit about where you see the future of Israeli politics going in this regard, and what that means for Arab citizens, given trends in recent years and what seems like trends in years to come as well?
Yeah. Look, youth positions is a result of the education system, of their parents and the Ministry of Education, both of them. And if you take the Israeli textbooks, you will find a narrative that is isolating the Jews from the Middle East. I think this mentality that enabled them to build walls about Israel, around, you know, it's not all, these walls are not around Gaza and isolating Gaza only, or isolating the West Bank. These walls are isolating the Israeli population from the region. They think that they are living much more close to DC than to the region where we live. And this isolation mentality make it possible that for 90 minutes in a football game in Bitar, Jerusalem, in Jerusalem itself, they may stand for 90 minutes and scream, "Death to Arabs, death to Arabs." When you have Deputy Prime Minister Minister of Foreign Affairs, that inciting to population transfer in the UN, just few months ago, he Minister Lieberman stand in the UN and he was promoting the solution of population. Again, I have to say, population transfer, because population transfer have been implemented in 48, in 67, several times it have been implemented, and it never brought any kind of peace for anybody in the region. So another transfer of population transfer of the Palestinian community and shifting the map is what is promoted in the public sphere and in the schools. This atmosphere is real daily challenge for us. Just last week, we released the racism report in Israel with a coalition of Jews and Palestinian organizations that are fighting against racism. 552 cases of racism have been documented, also with media documentation, that have been taking place in the last year, double than year before. And surprise, surprise, 110 cases have been documented of racism against Jews against Jews, Jewish people against Jewish people. You know, against the Russians, the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians are targeted in Israel in many public places. So people that thought that you can isolate racism and you can discriminate just the Palestinians, just the Arabs, and then the discrimination will not be something that will feed hate speech internally also between Jews, are living in an illusion. Because also 72 cases have been documented in discrimination or racism against immigrants, people that run away from Sudan and Eritrea. The Prime Minister was referring to them as dangerous, as a risk in his speech in the Knesset. And these people, most of them are refugees that are willing even to serve in the Israeli army. Just they run away from terrible crisis that is taking place in Sudan and in Africa. And now they are threat in Israel for the Jewish democracy, the only democracy again. I think what you see in public opinion in general, what you see with kids, is what you see in education, in the education system in Israel. And we have to face this. You know, it's not enough for us, and that's one of our challenges. One of our challenges is to come here also and to speak here in the US to the Jewish Americans, and we call you as Palestinian Americans to speak to the Jewish Americans. They know what it means to be minority better than the Jewish majority in Israel. We suffer as a minority. You know, F. Foxman and people in the US have more voice in Israel than us. They can call the Prime Minister off, but the Prime Minister, and they don't pay penny as taxes. They don't pay taxes. We are the ones that pay taxes. Arab Knesset members may call the Prime Minister for a year and he will not reply there. While any leader in the Jewish American community can call the Prime Minister and ask him, and we call you here as Palestinian Americans, hold the Jewish Americans responsible. If they show solidarity with Israel, they should understand that they have responsibility to our reality. They have to be much more active in protecting human rights, the same like they are protecting. It's not question of right and left. It's not question of Republicans and Democrats. It's question of human rights, values. Which values you want to promote in this region? You want to promote values of humiliation of people, burning people cars. This is a picture of students in Safad. That a rabbi that get his salary from the government is inciting against the Arab students. Don't rent them houses, don't rent them flats. Arab students that studying in Safad are harassed systematically for the last year. This rabbi keep getting his salary from the Israeli government. Not from just local council, from the Israeli government. And when you go and you ask the police to investigate him, nothing will be done. Of course, any Arab leader that will incite or will criticize, he will be investigated immediately. like even of criticizing policy things. The Arab political leaders in Israel have been investigated all over the years in minor issues. Visiting enemy countries. What enemy countries? Like to visit Syria and to promote real peace with Syria is not enemy country. Syria is not enemy country for us. And we think that we have unique status as Palestinians to outreach to the Arab region because we see ourselves as part of this region. So when you talk about what's going on with the kids, with the pupils in schools, it's reflecting the policies that are implemented from up. And our challenge is how we will change this. And this is part of what we are doing on the ground, both of us. We refuse to be isolated as Palestinians. And we think what was right for the South Africans during their struggle, that they even were jailed, but they kept outreaching to the white South Africans. We see that we have responsibility to stop this isolation of our community and outreach to the Jewish public in Israel and also to schools. We were speaking last week also even in Sderot for hundreds of students. There was hostility, but we are the only ones, the only Palestinians and the only Arabs that have accessibility, linguistic and physical, and even mental accessibility, that we can speak to our Palestinian brothers and sisters and also to the Jewish people that are living in Israel. And we want to use this added value and this accessibility to change the reality that we live in, and also the people that are living in refugee camps and in occupied territories. This is our challenge. We want to protect the unrecognized villages. We want to protect our situation. We want to prevent these laws from being implemented, and we will challenge the Nakba law. In the Nakba, in May 15, we will challenge the Nakba law, and we will commemorate the Nakba. Nobody will prevent us from commemorating our narrative and our story. We have the right to do that, and you know what? We have the responsibility also to show these Jewish kids that there is narrative of the Palestinians, and our narrative is important to be dealt with as part of reconciliation and peace building. Until now, our narrative have been pushed away. No, if you want real peace, you have to talk about the history. You have to take responsibility to what happened and what's happening today. And unfortunately, all peace initiatives that have been promoted by the international community have been based on agreements between leaders in Geneva or in Oslo. We should promote real peace based on the history, on justice, and this peace have to be built on reconciliation and responsibility. People have to stand and to apologize for what was done in our region and to build peace on the same concept how peace have been built in South Africa today. Not just peace agreements. It's not about peace agreements. It's about people that need to live for generations in different reality. And these kids may be good, may be shifted to be good killers in the next wars, but we have responsibility to shift them to be peace builders.
Thank you, Jafar. Amal, I wanted to ask you, you talked a lot about, the Israeli government making it impossible for the Bedouin community to stay within their traditional villages. What do they want to do with the land? What is the plan that they have in mind? What's the motive for moving the Bedouin community out of the areas where they're in?
First of all, if we are talking about the AlHjooj issue, in 1972, they said to the people, we are going to sit with you and talk about your ownership on this land. Now you are going to live in Rahat, so move to Rahat, and we will talk about this later. Okay? In the 90s, what people saw, all of a sudden that the JNF are coming towards this area and starting planting trees in the land of AlHjooj. So people went out and say, well, we are having, now we have to talk about this. This is our land, and we are not going to give you to plant trees. And this is what's happening. People start coming back from Rahat and build their tents on that area. And this is part of what their resistance saying, this is our land, and you cannot give it to the JNF. Now, most of the area of the Negev, what they are telling the people all over as part of the propaganda and the Israeli TV, that the Bedouin people are taking over the land. Be careful, the Bedouin people are taking over the land. We are sitting only in 3.2% of the land of the Negev. That's all. But what they are doing in terms of propaganda, that everyone will be afraid that the Bedouin community is taking over the land. Most of the land is empty in the Negev area. And that what they are doing now is there is plan to make it more, what you call it, Tahweed al-Naqab wal-Jalil, Judaism to the Naqab of the Naqab and the Galil. Because they want to have majority of Jewish people living in the Naqab area and majority of Jewish people living in the Galil area. The last 2 years, what they are doing now in the Naqab area, they are bringing military bases from Tel Aviv and the center to the Naqab area, and now they are going to bring the biggest one also from the Rehovot area, the center of Israel, towards the Naqab, and making this area that where soldiers and the military forces are going to live there. The Nevatim Air Force Base is also sitting on 45,000 dunams that in 1980, most of the Bedouin tribes that used to live there were relocated and their lands were confiscated for this purpose. And the Nevatim Air Force bases are sitting there. When I visited that area and looked around, they were sitting on quarter of this land, and the majority of the land around this base is empty. And why they ask people to move and force people to move? Because they are thinking that this is their way to protect the land from the Bedouin community. So this is what they want to have, having more Jewish living in this area, and they are encouraging Jewish young kids, men, to come to the Negev by saying to them, when you come and build your own farm, we will give you water, money, and everything. So the farm of the Jewish family that will start building it in the Negev, they will get immediately water and electricity. But the village that was exist before the state of Israel was established, it's not recognized. But the farm that only one Jewish man and his wife are living there, they will get the recognition of this area. This is the purpose. They want to take over the land for Jewish causes, for military causes, because this area, again, when they are bombing Gaza, I live in Bar Saba, I live in this area. When they are bombing Gaza, we hear the Air Force. This is what they used it, the last war against Gaza. Most of the efforts was in the Negev area. So this is, for them, is a good area for military bases, and this is how they view it. But what I think is that the Bedouin community also, I'm going back to this responsibility issue. There is no way that we play the role of the victim. Playing the role of the victim is not doing anything. We have also, as a community, to take responsibility, to put our alternative plans on the table, and to be there as an active people, as the case of AlHjooj, that now it's, since July till today, people are in a daily basis demonstrating, in a daily basis sending pictures all over. And this is how you guys heard about AlHjooj. This is not, it came by itself. You heard about AlHjooj because the activists, the non-governmental organizations, and when you look at the Israeli media, the day that they destroyed the AlHjooj village, you won't see one picture even. No one in Tel Aviv, if he is only looking at the Israeli channels, knowing about what's going on in AlHjooj. They will never show what's going on there. So it's part, again, it's part of not presenting the case of the Bedouin community, and part of we are invisibles. Nobody see this community, and this is one of the challenges that we are facing. So we present the case every place we go to Tel Aviv, we go to the government, we sit with everyone that we can sit with them. We bring it to the public by the newspaper, by the alternative channels that exist, especially the Arab channels that exist, Al Jazeera, for example. But this is something that we also need your support as people who are living in the United States, Palestinian community, the young generation of the Palestinian community. Come and visit and have summer camps with the Bedouin kids in the unrecognized villages, build the simple houses, help us building preschools for the kids there. For example, just mention Sawawin area. Sawawin is one of the unrecognized villages. And there is 0 high schools in the unrecognized villages. 0 high schools. And the government is saying, how come 65% dropping out from the schools? We cannot show these facts in the newspaper to the public that people will know that 65% dropping out from the schools in the unrecognized villages. 0 high schools in the unrecognized villages. In Swawin, there were elementary school in the Swawin, and the government decided to close this elementary school and bring the kids by transportations from Swawin to another area. They didn't provide the kids. For the last year, from September till today, these kids are not going to the school. I'm talking about 200 kids. My volunteers, our volunteers, 600 volunteers, part of what they are doing is working with these kids on a daily basis. So when you talk about how much it cost Israel, the government, to do the transportations, 60 million shekel a year to make the transportations from the unrecognized villages to the recognized villages, sending their kids to the schools. By this money, you can build a school in each of the unrecognized villages. It's not an issue of money. It's an issue of policy. It's an issue of recognizing more Arab villages. And this is what we came up with it every day. 60 million shekels they spent in transportations. They would build schools and not do this. That would be better for the people. But it's policy.
Well, thank you to both of you very much. At this point, I want to open it up for questions, and again, remind anyone viewing online to send in their questions now as well. Let's start right here.
Paul Verdine with Seville, the international organization based in East Jerusalem, led by the Reverend Dr. Naim Atik. I was in El Araqib just a month ago on March 6th, one day before it was demolished again, the most recent time, in other words, the 23rd time. My question for Amal is, in the days and weeks after this destruction, where do the villagers go? Where are they now, the children especially?
There is a cemetery in this village. I am sure you saw the cemetery. The only place that people can go now is the cemetery. There is 2 tents in that cemetery. 1 tent for men and the other tent for women. People are living now in these 2 tents as a collective. They share this 1 kitchen. They share, all the men are sharing the 1 tent. The women are sharing the other tent. And the kids are traveling with their parents to Rahat, to the elementary schools. This is the situation. But the issue for Al-Araqib is the issue that if we are not succeeded in that issue, we will lose all the issues of the unrecognized villages. We have to succeed in Al-Araqib issue. This is why we are doing more fundraising for Al-Araqib issue. This is why we are doing more public awareness around the Al-Araqib issue, because this is the key issue of the unrecognized villages. If we fail there, then there is no hope again for the other 45 unrecognized villages. People are living in a very tough situation. They get support in terms of food even from the areas around, from Arab Jewish organization, from Arab organization, from the international community. But in the land day, we were there with the kids for also for educational activities. But this is how people live in 2 tents right now, because for the first 15 times when they came and destroyed, they left all the ايش بقول الحديد والخشب. They destroyed and left everything there. They learned that if they leave, then they will rebuild. So they start destroying and take everything. So people have to buy the new materials from the beginning. So they destroy and they take with, and they clean everything and they take it with them.
Okay, let's go here first. Just wait for the microphone and then.
This is Dr. Said. I just wanted to ask Amal, what is the economic basis for the 40 villages in Negev? How do they live? Where is their economy comes from?
Let's talk about the fact that there is no jobs opportunities in the unrecognized villages. We are making 25% of the population in the Negev area. We are 43% that we are relying on the security, social security benefits. That's one of the major facts that we are having. The majority of the people are working as cheap labor in Jewish factories in the Jewish cities and towns, especially in agriculture and building and infrastructures. This is where people are working. If you are lucky, then you will be a teacher in one of the elementary schools in the unrecognized villages. Not all of the unrecognized villages having elementary schools. We have 45 unrecognized villages, only 18 elementary schools. So kids has to come from different unrecognized villages to this school. So there is a high rate of unemployment among the people. We're talking about more than 60%. We are talking about 89% among the women in the unrecognized villages. And again, the Bedouin community they are holding the 80% of the sheep and the camels, the sheep, and the 80% of sheep goats and sheep exist in the Negev area. So, and people cannot go around for herding. They will stop them from going around in the areas that for grazing for their sheep. And so people would raise animals next to their houses in a very basic conditions. And again, people will have difficulties in also making business from these farms. These farms are more kind of a daily life, struggling the daily life, but it's not a business that people can live and grow with it, because there is no milk quota and there is no water quota. If you are herding sheep, you are entitled. If you are a Jewish person in a Moshav, in an agriculture village, you are entitled to water and land, and also you have entitled to get milk quota. You can sell your milk to Tnova, but none of the Bedouin people who are raising sheep can do this and are entitled of this. If you will go there, then again, this is against all the farmers in the Bedouin community, and they are having the 80% of the sheep in the country, so it's the majority.
Do they dig wells and have some farming?
They have it in a very, very basic, but it's not the way that they can make a live out of it. It's not something that can help people to make a live out of it. This is one of the challenges.
Okay, let's go over here.
This question is for Jafar. Obviously, you can't seek justice from the Israeli Supreme Court. Take, for example, Baram. They ruled in favor of the owners of the town, and the government refused to recognize it. Did you ever consider going to the United Nations or the Human Rights Commission and complain about these things?
Yeah. Look, I have to say that UN human rights instruments have been proved as a lot of slogans when it comes to the Palestinian issue and little action in general. Of course, when it comes to the implementation of the division decision, it have been implemented, but when it comes to any other issues related, since 48 we face, as Palestinians in general, so many UN declarations and UN decisions that haven't been implemented. So I don't have real hope that the UN instruments will be helpful for the Palestinian community in Israel, and not for the Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territories. We had just last week the Land Day. And we were looking in the archive. We are a community that don't have archive. Like nobody allocated the resources to the Palestinian community to build an archive. But we find some documents, and we discover one of the documents was in '78. It was a report that submitted by the Committee for Defense of the Lands of the Palestinian community in Israel to the Human Rights UN Human Rights Committee. And of course, land confiscation still taking place in the Naqab. After the Land Day in '76, And we paid very high prices. You know, like 6 people have been killed and many people have been injured and jailed and etc. But the land confiscation of 76 have been cancelled. And the people kept their lands. This is what have been proved for us, that civil struggle can succeed. And the struggle of the land day succeeded in keeping the land of the people in the whole Mel area, where was the confiscation, the big confiscation. That's the importance also of this struggle in Al-Araqib, in unrecognized villages. They talk about 2% of the lands of the Bedouin community of the Naqab. If you drive from Beersheba to Eilat, it's like 3 hours. It's empty land. It's empty land, and you know, like they want to bring Jews to live in the Naqab, so if they will bring another 1 million people to live in the Naqab, there is still enough place. It's not question of the land, it's question of which kind of development and which kind of human. You know, this whole struggle that they keep pushing us on the land issue to the corner to limit our land and our space. It's to limit also our space in education. In, you know, like only 1.5% of the professors, of the researchers in the Israeli universities are our professors. And they come all over the world, and they have cooperation with US, with American universities, and etc. And nobody asks them the same question that you ask yourself: how many African American you have in your university? How many Palestinians you have in the Israeli universities? So they try to keep us on this daily struggle on the land issue, and by this to take us away from many developments. You know, not many, you know, Israel is contributing to the high tech. The big export field in Israel is high tech. More than 70,000 workers in Israel work in the high tech fields. Only 300 Arabs. Military reasons, security reasons. So when you talk about UN instruments, you know, maybe you have you have better access to the UN in New York than us. But I would like to see the human rights report that have been released by the State Department, the US. You know, the Congress created an instrument, American instrument, US Human Rights Report. You know, the State Department publish every year US Human Rights Report, and it has been used in the case of several countries also in South America, as an instrument that you can follow up your foreign policy and foreign aid. When the US State Department Human Rights Report reported, you know, they have full information about racism, killing Arab citizens by police officers, unrecognized villages, and etc. They have chapters about these issues. Go to the US Human Rights Report and you will see chapters. Right. That never have been discussed in any Congress committee. The American aid to US haven't been conditioned with improvement of human rights issues. So parallel to the work that we do on the ground in supporting ourselves, supporting our communities, building coalitions, we are coming here to ask you to help us. You are American citizens. You can be Palestinian Americans, and you can be from any origin. And, you know, like, you are the Americans. You have better say sitting here, and we call you to be much more active also on the issue of the Palestinian minority in Israel, and to promote real peace building in our region, not illusions of peace processes. So I say, you know, like, and this is how we use also our resources. We don't put a lot of our resources in UN instruments because we know, unfortunately, that many countries undermine the UN, and they don't want that the UN, you know, they want to make business between themselves. So part of our resources today is to outreach to you as citizens of the US. We expect you to be much more proactive in influencing the foreign policy of the US, and we hope that you can help us, maybe more than the UN. I am sad to say that the UN is not effective in our case, and I hope that countries will be more effective. To see how to see the Deputy Prime Minister of Israel standing in the UN, where the whole lessons learned from the Second World War should be implemented. That he's standing there and he's calling for population transfer, and nobody left. Which report they need? They have all the reports. You know what? We submit also reports. We have been in Geneva, and the UN Human Rights Commissioner, she was in the country, and also here you can see a report of our meetings, also with the elders, and also with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the British Minister, and the Human Rights Commission. It's work that we need to do on the ground in Israel, Palestine, and you need to do in DC and in all members of the UN to motivate them to use the same human rights standards that they want to be used when it comes to the violation of their rights. You know, I had this discussion with the South Africans. They told me, you expect us to boycott Israel? I told them, I don't expect anything. I expect one thing. I expect you to do what you expected everybody in the international community to do for you when you were under struggle, where you were struggling for liberation. That's it. Do what you think that can be done. And I think you can do here in the US more to end this tragedy than what was done until now. And then the UN will join.
Folks, we are running a little bit over on time, but we did get 2 questions from our online viewing audience that I think are really worth mentioning here. I'm going to ask both of them to you, and you can respond to them however you like in the moments that we have remaining. The first is from someone named Antar Masoud, and the question is, will the Palestinians in 1948, I assume he means Palestinian citizens of Israel, join a unified Palestinian National Council to face the threat of land confiscation and form a Palestinian state? The second question comes from Nelly Jaber, and the question is, I'm sure you may have heard of the assassination of Julio Mer Khamis, who was a Palestinian actor from Nazareth. Do you have any comments on his assassination?
Yeah. It was sad to get the news just in our way here. Giuliano, at least for me, you know, he lived in Haifa actually, not in Nazareth, and he came from a family of 2 fighters. Both of them, Saliba Khamis, who was the General Secretary of the Committee for the Defense of Lands, who died actually in Geneva when he was advocating on UN institutions on the protection of the Palestinian minority in Israel, and Arna Mer, who was doing great work with the kids, Palestinian kids in the Jenin refugee camp. The news of today on Giuliano is shocking us, and parallel to our struggle for liberation and to change our reality, we have also to be clear in which kind of people we want to be. And we want to be a people that will be liberated, but also that culture and women's rights and human rights will be protected. And we don't know yet who killed Giuliano and Jenin today. In any case, for us, it shows that we have a lot of work to do, also against the Israeli occupation, and also internally inside our communities. The fact that you are victim of oppression doesn't protect us. We have responsibility to face also the crisis of values inside our community. And I think it's very important to give this message to anybody that maybe did this. You know, the first reaction of ours was that it's probably undercover Israeli police forces, military forces. But you know what? We can take the risk also. If it came from Palestinians that did this terrible crime, they have to be punished. And for us, it's a message that parallel to our struggle, we have to build ourselves as a nation, to build ourselves as a people and as a humans. and this is a message to us, we did both organizations. We did big shift in our resources lately from many of the struggles that we did on human rights with the state. We shifted a lot of our resources to rebuild our communities. Because when you face such crises in the region, this crisis come to you also internally. And we have a lot of violence inside our communities. And we have to rebuild our values and to build a new generation of youth that will not struggle only for liberation, but also for the values that we believe that this is a human rights values that we want to promote. So I would just, I know that Giuliano have only 2 brothers, and both of them not in a good situation. I know that people, also activists in Mossawa, are today involved in the preparation of his funeral in Haifa. It's a sad day for all of us.
Do you have any remarks on the second question about the involvement of Palestinian citizens of Israel in the broader framework of Palestinian decision-making?
Look, Amal was lately in several events in Ramallah. And we know that also on our networks there is people that are very active in Gaza to call for reconciliation, Palestinian reconciliation, and rebuilding the Palestinian people. We have been divided in 48, 63, 64 years, but we have responsibility to rebuild ourselves from the reality that have been created for us. I think part of it is how we can build the culture space that we want to build, the political future, and in any, it's not in our hands today if it's one state or 2-state solution. It's much more in the hands of the international community and the Jewish population in Israel. But in both cases, even if it will be 2-state solution, we have responsibility to rebuild ourselves as a people that have even family links. Jenin refugee camp, big part of the people living in Jenin refugee camp came from Haifa. And we have responsibility to rebuild this destruction that have been created for the last 64 years. And I do see ourselves doing that with clear vision that despite any political solutions that will be created in this region, we have responsibilities toward each other. And we have responsibilities also toward humanity in general. We are part of, so we have responsibility also to show that we are able to struggle peacefully and build our nation, and parallel to contribute and to be happy to everybody that is liberating himself if he is living in Tunis or in Chile. So this is part of our responsibilities, to rebuild ourselves, yes, but also to contribute as a nation, but also to contribute and to be part of the whole struggle for better future for all humanity, and it can be in Africa or in South America or in Europe even.
Thank you all very much.